Hello and welcome back. I'm just thinning out some of these raspberries. If you haven't grown raspberries before, they are quite brutes in the garden and they will spread almost everywhere if you give them the chance. So it's important that you keep on top of them. Where they'll pull them out, but treat them like weeds. If you keep pruning them or pulling them out where you can, that root will weaken and eventually they'll stop coming up. Now we've found raspberries under our plum tree, in the bed where the strawberries are. They really are quite brutes and want to colonise most of your garden. So you will need to show them who's boss. You can see where we have put the wires down, whether it be on this side or that side. So initially these plants, this is the mother plant. You can see where we've been cutting the stems back over the years, but they're spreading out to here and into here. And for me it's a place where I don't want them. Now, in today's programme, we are going to be looking at, is spring here or is it not here? I can see it there and I can see it over there. But there's some places I can't quite see it yet. So let's look into our no-dig garden and see where spring has sprung. Hello and welcome back to the No-Dig Norfolk Gardener, where today it really does feel like spring has arrived. Now, I have been watching some of our favourites on YouTube, and quite a lot of people have been saying that spring hasn't quite got going for them yet. Well, they are based in different parts of the country, and I think that's one thing we can all take a learn from. Every year it's different for different parts of the country. For us here in Norfolk, it's almost been a model winter and spring. And we haven't seen that for a number of years. For the last few years, they've been extremely dry. Indeed, I was looking back into my diary from last year, and we were actually quite desperate for rain, even now, in the month of April. It was very dry through January, February, March, and into April. Yes, things were further on and more advanced because the weather was warmer. But is that actually what we want? Certainly what climate change seems to be doing for us. I've actually been quite pleased to see that the winter has been really cold. We still get those little anomalies, like February, bone dry virtually. We hardly saw a drop of rain. And the last month in March, would it ever stop raining? But here in the month of April, so far, it's been actually a typical April. It's blustery, sun shining at the moment. It was raining a few hours ago. And those showers just bluster their way through. But what it does mean is that things will really start to get motoring. But is everything as it seems? Let's have a look. Now, like most of you guys, on my phone I have a weather app. And today, 12 degrees outside, sun shining. But tonight, it says it's going to get down to 4 degrees. Now, I wouldn't generally worry about 4 degrees, but what I do worry about is those apps. I always think they can go 2 degrees either way. If they say it's going to be 4, it could be 2, or it could be 6. So I like to err on the side of caution. And if you look down here, you'll see that I've actually slightly earthed up our main crop potatoes. I don't think the weather is going to be severe enough tonight to damage those in any way, but you never know, and it's better to be safe than sorry. Now, of course, what you could do is cover them with fleece, horticultural fleece, but then you've got to take it off again because you really want the air to get to them and for any rain to come down to get to them and to push them on. We have actually passed our last frost date. It's mid-April now, so we're not expecting to see any particularly harsh frosts, but of course we still can get them. That doesn't mean to say that's the end of them. Once every few years you'll get a really harsh one, or we will, right in the middle of May. Sometimes these potatoes are up here, and I got caught by that a few years back. That's why I don't put our potatoes into the ground until mid to late March, knowing that they'll only now be breaking through the surface. They're still small, but what that does enable me to do is to get some of our compost and just drop some over the potatoes. Now, don't worry that it's going to stunt the plant or kill the plant. It won't. If you think those shoots have found their way up from 6 inches below the ground, they'll find their way up here, believe me. Now, of course, we are growing our first and second earlies in tubs. Because they don't take up all of the bed, all we need to do is just drop some fleece over the top of those tubs. You know, it's not going to be a 14 feet piece that we want to just pull over. We can leave the fleece on top of those tubs and we know that they will be all right. Now, the spring for us also brings birds into play, and pigeon is our main culprit, but when we first put in things like beetroot and radishes outside, the birds do like to have a peck at the leaves. That's why they're covered. And I did say to you a couple of 3 videos back that once we put this cover over, these will actually start to recover quite nicely. And you can see here, they have. Once those leaves no longer get pecked by the birds, you get a nice radish. And then there's the brassicas. Remember, we planted these mid-March. They were sown mid-February, and they went in as tiny little plants, but they're doing very nicely. And they're away, and very, very hopeful to get a nice harvest of these early part of June. And going back to gardening on a budget, the cost of living crisis, you remember that all of these were actually sown into supermarket trays where we'd bought mushrooms and things. Then they were pricked out into our modules. Some of them were actually sewn into toilet roll holders. This one in particular I remember, and it looks no better or no worse than any of the others that may have been grown the way we would normally do them, which is to sew them into trays and then pop them into modules. And you can see that Calabrese is looking really, really good. Now you can see that we've removed the cover from these broad beans. Now all of the bees and other insects that inhabit our garden can get to these and start to pollinate the flowers. I can see some buzzing around here now, so they've also become extremely interested in them. But what spring does bring for us, it doesn't just spring our plants on, it also springs the weeds on. So do keep an eye on your weeds all of the time. If I see weeds on a day like it is now, I'll hoe them. It's dry enough, they'll lay on top of the soil, wither and die. If it was damper, then we just hand weed and put them into a bucket. Of course, being no dig, we don't see quite so much weeds, but nevertheless, regardless of that, you always want to be keeping your eye out for weeds, and I can see a couple here, and just pull them out. Because you can see, if you look at this, it's got a tiny little head, but look how many roots that's actually starting to put down. And if you don't keep on top of that, within 6 to 8 weeks it will be at size where it can flower, and it'll be setting hundreds of seeds all over your garden. Here's a piece of grass that I just pulled out. And look how deep that root is going at the moment. It'll keep itself this sort of height for a while it's laying down all its roots. Pretty much like our vegetables, they put down lots of root first before they put on all the goodies at the top. And you might think that's only tiny, but then once it's got all its roots down, you'll look at that and think, oh my God, this grass is spreading everywhere, and every time I pull it, it keeps coming back. It's because it's laid all that root system down. So do keep on top of your weeds. We had those other 2 cauliflowers that were here, so all in all we had a harvest of 3 cauliflowers. Now I know that sounds quite disastrous, and I guess it was, you know, we hoped to get the whole rows in, but we did explain a couple of videos back why they didn't make it. We know the reasons why now, and we can do something about that. But they're out now, and that soil is now prepared, ready for our leeks to go in, which will go in there during June. And we'll probably grow a catch crop in there while we're waiting for the month of June to come along. We can put some radish in there, I've got some turnips I can stick in there. And of course at the top here, this is our outdoor garlic and shallot bed. And they're doing okay, there's nothing wrong with those at the moment. The warm spring weather has actually brought them on really quite well, and they're enjoying the warmth of this sunshine. Now, we did say to you in the last video that we've put our peas in, and if you look in here, their tendrils are already clinging to the cattle fencing that we put over this arch. So they're very happy and on their way. Hopefully in about 8 to 10 weeks time they'll be over here and we'll have flowers on them and pods already beginning to form. Some lovely peas to eat.
I can't wait.
Now the milder temperatures that April has brought to us, you can see that the carrots have germinated, they're through. The Norwich ones, you can see a definite row, so we know where that is, but actually the Amsterdam Maxi are now starting to come through, and within the next few days they'll have a definite row. You need to be closer to them as I am to actually see that they really are forming a good row. So that's great. And then what I'll do towards the end of this month, I'll sow another couple of rows beside those, and that will be it for our spring summer carrots. And they'll see us right the way through to September and October, when the carrots I sow this side, they'll be our main crop carrots. And like I say, they'll get sown June. I like to sow them in June. And then we have nice sized carrots by the time we get to late September and into October. The claret, well, that's still amazingly fantastic. We're absolutely loving it. My brother's actually only just left. He popped round to see us, and we've sent him away with some nice broccoli spears for him to enjoy. I don't know if my microphone now picked that up, but the bees are all around Mrs. W's stumpery. Spring always brings us such loveliness to look at. The daffodils and these lovely white flowers that I can never remember what they are, but they are closely related to snowdrops. And look at the comfrey. The comfrey is all out. And that's really great because bees absolutely love comfrey. They really do. And it won't be long, Mrs. W, before we can actually start harvesting some of that to be getting on with comfrey tea.
It certainly won't. It's looking good.
Did you see this down here? Look at the ladybird.
Oh.
Look.
Can I pick him up on the camera? Yes, I can.
Anything like this that you can do to encourage this kind of wildlife into your garden is going to help. You know, ladybirds go after aphids. Bees and other flying insects, they will come in and help your plants to be pollinated. Now, we do need those lovely insects because you can see here that this is our strawberry bed. We made this our new strawberry bed. And they're all now in flower. Well, the majority of them, you can see some flowers that are now actually starting to develop here. And another one in that plant there. And another whole bunch in this one. So we need those pollinators to be able to get in there so that we can have some lovely red strawberries. Birds, of course, we absolutely love. Not so keen on pigeons. Birds we absolutely love. But what birds will do, they will go after anything that's red. Cherries, strawberries, raspberries. They do like the soft fruit. Hence why we've now got this net in place to stop them being able to do that, but it will allow the insects to go in there and pollinate those flowers for us. Then, of course, you can slightly cheat spring, can't you? If we go in the greenhouse, we have lots of things that are coming ready to harvest now. You can see that the radishes in here are really quite far ahead. Spring onions, they're ready. I'm going to be enjoying some of those this evening, Mrs. W.
Oh yes.
We're getting many picks of spinach at the moment. These were only picked a couple of 3 days ago and we need to do another one, don't we?
Me too.
Carrots, well, I think I'm going to be right, Mrs. W.
Oh, there's definitely one there. Can I pick that up on the camera? Yes, I think I've got it.
So actually by sowing these things last October, they've overwintered nicely in this greenhouse and they'll be giving us harvest very soon. I should be thankful for those carrots because next month as we head into May, we get what's known as the hungry gap. That means there's not too much of the stored vegetables left anymore to eat, but equally there's not so much to harvest outside because we're in that time where everything's overlapping. We're hoping that our purple sprouting broccoli, claret, will continue the rest of this month and into May. Obviously carrots we're hoping for. We know we've got spinach. We also know that we've got some lettuce. That's a cut and come variety that we can actually start to enjoy. So hopefully we will still have fresh things to eat until we get to that point. By the end of May and in beginning of June, we should start to be seeing probably the first harvest in this garden of the things that we sowed will be the broad beans. They are generally the first thing to come to harvest. And we do so enjoy those, don't we, Mrs. W?
Oh, we do. Love them.
Yeah, you can see this ladybird again. It's not the same one. We're in a different part of the garden. They're doing their jobs, hopefully keeping the aphids at bay on this gooseberry. And as we approached here, I could hear the sound of bees, and that'll be because the flowers are here. And as they're opening up, those bees will get themselves in there to help pollinate those, so we have lots of strawberries. And if you remember, we actually pruned these back in November or December. Anyway, there's a video on our channel where we gave these a prune. We wanted to make them more goblet shaped and to get them into the right shape going forward, because they're now in their 3rd year, and you can see it's done no harm whatsoever. There's masses of flowers on there, and we shall get lots of gooseberries. You found that little bee, Mrs. W?
I have. I'm trying to get it filmed and I'm not very agile these days. It's definitely having a good feed.
There's an example for you. Spring is here, and everything in the No Dig Norfolk gardeners vegetable garden is working well. One thing I did want to show you, remember we pruned this back. You can see we've taken it back to the frame. It's now starting to sprout again, and they will indeed grow. These things will start to grow, and you'll see as we get to sort of July, August time, it'll be full of blackberries forming. But what it is doing now, it's starting to form its stems for next year, and here they are. So that's not unusual. You can see there's some coming in the middle here and here. So it's telling me that's really happy. Yeah, you found those there. Yeah, there's another one on the other side too. So that's doing exactly what it needs to be doing. And as we go through the rest of spring and indeed into summer, as they shoot up, what I do is the ones on this side I'll move to here and then just tie those together there. And the ones that are on this side, I'll do exactly the same thing on here and just tie those to there. That will help denote what are the new shoots. And we can keep an eye on them and keep them out of the way, so that once we've had all of the fruit that these stems are going to produce for us, we can then tie those in exactly the same way as the stems that you see here now. And I have to say, I really love this blackberry. I love blackberries anyway, but this is a thornless variety, and yeah, it's great when you want to come to pick them. In days gone by, before we actually grew our own blackberries, it was the hedgerows, wasn't it, Mrs. W? And you'd think, is that blackberry juice, or have I just scratched myself? You've just scratched yourself. Let's see what's going on with the onions, shall we? Oh, they're looking good, Mrs. W.
They are.
Very good. And you can see what I mean about weeds. It's one thing to cover these to keep the cool winds off these onions, but of course it is much warmer under there. The soil feels really quite warm compared to that. This feels really cold, whereas this feels really warm. But what it does do, it encourages all these weed seeds to grow. Now this is some cold compost that we put on here, and that's why I'm saying to you, you know, you need to keep on top of your weeds, because if you continue to let these grow, you're going to have a few problems further down the line. So when we finish this video, we shall give this a weeding. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you've got things under cover, don't just think, oh, all is great, and leave the covers there. No, I don't plan to take these covers off until we get to the end of this month. But you still need to lift them and do your weeding duties, because that's the result. What's that been over there? 3 weeks or so?
Yes, I think.
4 weeks, something like that. and that's what's happened in 4 weeks. Whereas the soil next door, of course, where there's nothing, where the pathway is, because I can see what's going on, I'm always walking around here and thinking, oh, there's a bit of a weed here, let's have that one out, yes, lovely. And so it stays relatively weed free. And of course it's also open to the elements of the weather. So yeah, do lift your covers now and again when you cover things in early spring, just to make sure that you're on top of your weeding duties. These are the rest of the cauliflowers that were harvested. And actually nothing ever goes to waste in the garden. I like to take all the leaves off and they will ultimately end up in here to help make us some lovely compost to use.
The chickens have got plenty at the moment, so they can't eat it all.
No, they can't, can they? I think spring has been as it should be, whereas the last few years, it's not. It's been so much more warmer, too warm in some cases, and that's something that we've gotten used to. And now when we have got some proper spring weather, we're actually questioning ourselves, is this right? Well, I think it is. Now, I do hope that you've enjoyed this video, and do let us know how things are going on in your mid-spring garden. Hopefully every bit as well as ours. And now that we are in mid-spring, I hope that it is warming up and you are seeing some good growth now in your vegetable garden. We shall see you on the next one.